Brodes Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Brodes. I'm going to call this episode the closing remarks. This is our closing thoughts on what we saw against the 49ers and kind of pushing into that awkward territory, waiting for the Super Bowl. We figured Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday would be easy, but then you start flirting around Thursday, Friday, getting through the weekend, Monday of next week. It's like, oh, it's so close, yet it's so far away. But I still have some things to share when it comes to whatever Kyle Shanahan did. And I can't believe, honestly, I can't believe that they utilized a tight end who wasn't good enough to play in the week before. Go home if you don't win against Dallas, and that tight end wasn't dressed. Yet Kyle Shanahan asked him to block Hassan Reddick, which ultimately led to Brock Purdy tearing his UCL. So let me get this straight. Coaching malpractice showed up in the NFC Championship game from Kyle Shanahan. Call me surprised. And I know they didn't know how bad the injury was when he was on the sidelines. But could you imagine a manager keeping a pitcher in a game that needed Tommy John? Oh my God. Oh my God. You got to go Wildcat. You have to go Christian McCaffrey. You can't put that poor kid back in the football game. I don't care what stage it is. I don't give a damn if it's the NFC Championship or not. The dude has a torn UCL, and he's throwing the football for you? Honestly, once again, I think that's coaching malpractice. Kyle Shanahan is supposed to be one of the biggest gurus in the sport. He went from in a higher regards for me. I thought of him in a higher regards to a big dip for the atrocious coaching I saw on the big stage. How do you ask that tight end to block Hassan Reddick? I don't know. It's honestly, it's stupid. It's stupid. He wasn't good enough to even be in uniform. He was inactive against the Dallas Cowboys. He did play against Seattle. He had a couple of regular season games. But see, this is where the disrespect comes for Hassan Reddick throughout the entire league. And it's funny because Darius Slay, who does his own little post-game review stuff on The Volume, I believe, which is Colin Cowherd's media platform, and he retweeted one of the posts where he was talking about they utilize what the media says. They see and hear everything. You might think because they pretend they don't hear it, that they don't, but they do. And it's just the tiniest little phrases that makes them pissed off, that gives them some fire. And George Kittle used the phrase, the Eagles are good on paper. On paper. I promise you that 70 sacks is not just something that's on paper. There's substance to that. There's a reason why on paper it says 70 sacks. And that's because they feast. That's because they eat you alive. That's because they have special talent like Hassan Reddick, who will blow up your quarterback's UCL if you put a tight end who was inactive the week before right in front of his face. We put up a Twitter poll, and there was 2,200 votes. Howie's best acquisition this year: A.J. Brown, Hassan Reddick, Bradbury, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson were the four options. A.J. Brown came in. Actually, we'll go backwards. Bradbury got 1% of the vote. I don't know if I mentioned that there were 2,200 votes on this or not. But Bradbury, 1% of the votes. Think about the huge addition he provided. We had Steven Nelson over there. We had to throw Avonte Maddox on the outside in previous seasons. This guy did so well that he's going to get a fat bag that the Birds can't match, and they're going to have to look elsewhere. specifically lethal talent in the draft at a young age that you can have at a cost-efficient pace for a little bit of time. But that's definitely been a weak area for Howie Roseman to draft. But the fact that he's getting 1%, I don't think knocks him. It just tells you on how incredible these acquisitions have been. C.J. Gardner-Johnson at 3%. The dude was leading the league in interceptions and all this stuff. He was catching footballs and being a beast in that secondary, going from nickel to safety. And we didn't know how that would play out and how that would pan out with Jonathan Gannon's scheme. And it was A+. A.J. Brown, only 27%. Hassan Reddick led the way with 69. Now, I wonder, is that just recency biased because he blew up that game? Maybe. This is where I have a difficult time. And there's really no wrong answer. But I personally believe the answer is A.J. Brown. And hear me out. Because with Hassan Reddick, wow, look at how much damage he's done to opposing quarterbacks. And I know, I'm sure you're sick and tired of hearing the phrase 70 sacks by now, but I'm going to continue to highlight it because it is that insane and it is that wild. If you remove those sacks from Hassan, and let's say you plugged somebody else in, you didn't acquire Hassan Reddick in the offseason, but you got another, just a solid defensive end, solid. Maybe you get 6 sacks, 7 sacks. Well, you're still above everybody else. You're still up there, number 1 in the NFL, scary as hell. If you remove A.J. Brown from this offense, and Devontae's just your number 1, and then you have Quez Watkins, Pascal, and someone else is in there instead of A.J. Brown, just a solid wide receiver, I think your offensive plan and the way you can run your offense changes significantly more than what your defense can do. It won't be as scary and it won't be as game-breaking, but still, I think you'd still be up there number 1 in the NFL in sacks, and teams would be afraid. But do you see the drop-off in the offense without AJ? And I don't want to downplay what the drop-off without Hassan Reddick would be. But I think that's kind of how I look at it and I angle it. And from that sense, I have A.J. Brown up at the top as the biggest acquisition. But the fact that we can sit here and debate which one, think about those 4.